Good evening. Today is the 19th day of November 2015, and we are continuing with our explorations in Savitri. And as always, I begin with something from Mother. And this paragraph is so important. Mother writes, says, "In truth, the entire form of Savitri has descended en masse from the highest region, and Sri Aurobindo, with his genius, only arranged the lines in a superb and magnificent style. Sometimes entire lines were revealed, and he has left them intact. He worked hard, untiringly, so that the inspiration could come from the highest possible summit. And what a work he has created! Yes, it is a true creation in itself. It is an unequaled work. Everything is there. And it is put in such a simple, such a clear form. Verses perfectly harmonious, limpid, and eternally true. My child, I have read so many things, but I studied the best works in Greek, Latin, English, and of course in French literature, also in German, and all the great creations of the West and East, including the great epics. But I repeat it, I have not found anywhere anything comparable with Savitri. All these literary works seem to me empty, flat, hollow, without any deep reality, apart from a few rare exceptions. And these too represent only a small fraction of what Savitri is. What grandeur, what amplitude, what reality! It is something immortal and eternal he has created. I tell you once again, there is nothing like it in the whole world. Even if one puts aside the vision of the reality, that is, the essential substance, which is the heart of the inspiration, and considers only the verses in themselves, one will find them unique, of the highest classical kind. What he has created is something man cannot imagine, for everything is there, everything. Tonight we begin with a new book, and welcome our brother Alok. Book 2 is an extraordinary book. It has 15 cantos. And you know, Savitri has just less than 24,000 lines, and in Book 2 there are just a little over 6,000 lines. 1/4 of Savitri is Book 2. How much Sri Aurobindo poured into this. So we begin.
It is also Book 2 which he considerably expanded.
Yes.
And there is a reason for it that we'll see as we go through. It's one of those books which has been considerably added on later on. The other part, when you were reading about the mother's revelations on Savitri, these are rare moments when the mother has spoken about herself. And she speaks about having had read all the classical literature in German, Greek. So she was no less, she had a very, very, very developed, profound and deep intellectual side.
Yes.
And once she mentioned that to Nalnida in the passing, Nalnida speaks about it, that once the mother said that, my child, at one time I took a lot of interest in intellectual things, but they have been left aside. And he says that this was a message to the mother, to me, perhaps noticing that I have an inclination towards intellectuality. So, what a revelation that, she had read all these scriptures.
Yes.
In the Indian scriptures itself, at least three we know for sure. The Gita, which was a book given to her by Janindranath Mukherjee, in all likelihood, or Chatterjee maybe, but the Bengali gentleman. And she read the Gita and realized the truth contained in it. Then she wrote the Isha Upanishad, there in Sanskrit, yes, that's there. She translated Narada's Bhakti Sutras. These three we know, they are already documented. Aurobindo says she was already an adept in the Buddhist yoga and the yoga of the Gita before coming to Pondicherry.
Yes.
So, when she says something about Savitri, it's why this is important is because sometimes people have a tendency to believe, oh, yes, naturally the mother would say so. And I have heard sometimes remarks like, oh, she said so because she was a disciple of Aurobindo. Despite Aurobindo making it very, very clear that the mother is not a disciple of Aurobindo. She has herself had the realizations. In fact, at one place she says, she entered into the supermind through the front door. And Aurobindo had to go through the back door. Of course, he had to prepare the whole earth. And that's what we see in Book 2, The Traveler of the Worlds, where Aurobindo's yoga begins to assume the avataric mission. Till Book 1, Canto 3, Freedom from Ignorance, he recovers the lost spiritual light for man. And then Book 4, The Secret Knowledge, and Book 5, suddenly he is seized with a new aspiration. It's a revelation of the particular mission for which he has come.
Yes.
The ideal must be his natural home. This is the big issue of man, that the ideal is not our natural home. It is something we have to aspire for, struggle for, strive for, meditate upon, do a tapasya, even surrender. It's not something which is just given to us. So man has a strange predicament that he is born with an ideal, all human beings worthy of being, called as humans, and yet it is not natural to him. He is born with it, he strives for it, he hopes for it, dreams for it, wishes, aspires, struggles. But yet his base is buried in the animal mire. This is the problem. So Aurobindo, from the gates of the supramental, he returns back to earth to prepare. It's not just an overview. In The Traveler of the Worlds, we see one kind of knowledge which is important for all aspirants of integral yoga. In normal yogas, it is enough to know the self, and all that is practically necessary that would come in the way. So there are some prescriptions, do's and don'ts, etc. And you need to know a little bit about them so that you can arrive at the self. But here in this yoga, one has to have a knowledge of, if possible, as much detailed knowledge as feasible of the complex play of forces that stands behind this creation. Because the sadhaka has to navigate through all these haze and maze of forces. And the mother puts it very simply that, the integral yoga, you have three sets of forces which will come in the way. And they will test us for our readiness. Forces of universal nature, which we say is me, myself, but it's identification with nature. The adverse and the hostile forces, and the divine and the spiritual forces. And we'll see that Ashwapati, through the course of his journey, will encounter all these forces, know their law and rule, because now he has a much greater work to do, not just his individual transformation, but the transformation of the earth. So he must know each and every force, being, energy, their godheads, their supporting beings, what is their place in the totality of the creation, what is their role, every plane. And as we know, in the lower world, there is a triplicity, physical, vital and mental. So here also, through 15 cantos, of course the last one is the greater knowledge, where he once again reaches that door of the supramental consciousness. But the other cantos, particularly before the 14th canto, we see that it's arranged hierarchically. the physical worlds, the vital worlds, and the mental worlds. Their highs and their lows. Because each of these corresponding world has its own heaven. There is a heaven which is purely the subtle physical heaven, which is the perfection that subtle physical world can create. Perfection of form, perfection of beauty. And it has its nether deeps, where it lends a charm and a danger to the snake. This is what Aurobindo writes in the subtle physical. The vital worlds have their own heaven, their highs, the glory of life, and they have their own nether darknesses, where that same vital energy, that same force of life has turned towards devouring itself. What we are seeing all around now, dance of death and destruction, coming from the very bowels of the earth. So again, mental worlds have their high heavens, the heavens of the ideal, and of course the greater mind. And they have their own kingdoms of the lower mind, the little mind, where we see the, not exactly hell, but because at the mental world we don't have heaven and hell like that, but their highs and their lows.
But when we get into Canto 8...
Yes, that's what. That is where we see the darkness, where from the vital world it dips.
Yes.
So he has to explore this entire map, where we can also see the evolutionary journey of the earth. We can see many things here. But for Ashupati, it was a necessity to fulfill his avataric role.
Some people say that they don't like to read book 2 because there's so much darkness, but there's so much light also.
At the same time, who can reach light without knowing darkness? As he has said in book 2, Canto 7 and 8, none can reach heaven who has passed not
Who
through
has
hell.
not passed through hell.
So I think we must know, if anything, the laws of darkness, so that we are not fooled on the way. All the deceptions, their craft, their asuric and Rakshasi Maya is revealed and laid bare. And at the end of it, what a hope!
Yes.
He saw in night the eternal's shadowy veil.
Yes.
What a beautiful line this is.
Yes.
In destruction felt creation's hasty pace, knew death as a cellar in the house of life, and all destruction a prize for celestial gain. So this is how that part ends. So now we begin, and again to reiterate, this journey Ashupati is undertaking as an avatar. He is conscious. He is conscious of the divinity. He is one with the divine, and he is undertaking this journey, and that comes in the very beginning. Canto 1, the world stair. So this is the inner stair which exists in all of us. In the Upanishads, there are 4 worlds. The Brahman is described as fourfold, Chatushpad Brahman. So one is the outer, the waking consciousness. This too is Brahman, the matter that we see, feel, sense. This too is Brahman. Then there is the inner world, the dream state, the Swapna Jagat. That too is Brahman. That is the stair, which is the inner worlds. Then there is the Sushupti, the world where there is neither light nor darkness, but something else which none can describe, none can speak about. And that we see in book 3. And then the Turiya, in which all these are held together. So here we see the whole description of the inner worlds, which starts from subtle matter. So this is the world stair, and of course he will reveal to us how this world stair has been created, the Divine Mother by her sacrifice. It is she who has become this stair, this bridge, so that we can walk up and down. Now, why say that this is, the avatar, not just anyone going through this staircase? In fact, anyone cannot go up and down this staircase freely. So here we have the very first few lines. Alone he moved, washed by the infinity around him and the unknowable above. Now, Ashupati has realized the infinity, the infinite being, the infinite consciousness. He is fully aware and conscious of that. All could be seen that shuns the mortal eye. There is nothing hidden to him. It's not like struggling to understand the experiences. Whatever he sees, he knows. It's like a king reviewing his kingdom. All could be known, the mind has never grasped. This is his state in which he is traveling. All could be done, no mortal will can dare. Thus he could plunge into the night. So this is not a path recommended to us. This is a path, for us is the sunlit path. But this is a path that the avatar has to take. And Sri Ramakrishna has said, and the mother says very beautifully, reiterates the same thing. Sri Ramakrishna said there are two types of jivas.
Oh, yes.
The Jiva Koti and the Ishvara Koti. So Jiva Koti can only evolve and go up the ladder and vanish. But the Ishwar Koti can go up and down the ladder at will. So you will see when you read about the path of the saints. So they particularly say in all the path of the saints and the great master, they don't come down below a certain level. They cannot, because it's very dangerous. So they will give certain method to their disciples who have to follow that method, meditate or do whatever method has been prescribed for them, reach a point, and from behind there is the support of the Guru. But as the mother says, that the avatar can go up and down the ladder freely. In fact, she says he who can do it is the avatar. So here is Ashupati. He is now a free being. He has reclaimed his infinity and he can go up and down the ladder freely.
And so we see 3 sentences beginning with all.
Yes.
All can be seen, all can be known, all can be done.
This is his state. A limitless movement filled a limitless peace. Again, he is not seeing this movement as separate and isolated. This is again wonderful description that all this immense dance, this movement, this stupendous creation, and we can get a glimpse of this if we watch the stars at night. This drifting of these stars that is taking place. And so many of them, millions and billions and trillions. And at what speed they are moving? Yet in the immensity and silence of space. So this is how the divine being experiences creation. There is a limitless movement and yet it is supported by limitless peace. This is one image of Kali, Kali's dance upon the breast of Shiva. In a profound existence beyond earth's, parent or kin to our ideas and dreams. That is where all the great ideas are sown into our minds. And then we say, my idea. At one place, when people asked, now we have so many issues about copyright. Mother says, I don't believe in all these things. Yes. And in one of our prayers, she says that it is a sign of, if nothing else, for the sake of nobility, man should not take, this is my idea. If nothing else, for the sake of nobility. Because nothing really belongs to us.
Mother actually used the words,
yes.
I don't want any of my things to be copyrighted.
Absolutely. It is there in her written notes that I don't want any of my things to be copyrighted. I don't believe in it.
Yes.
At one place he says, I give from the point of view of higher reality, there is no importance given to these official and legal documents. What a vision.
Yes.
So here it is that where do the ideas and dreams come from? Where space is a vast experiment of the soul. In an immaterial substance linked to ours. This is another interesting thing, that we make sharp divisions, but there is a continuous interconnectedness. And when we speak of interconnectedness, nowadays this thought has come. People speak about oneness, unity, interconnectedness, and why it fails. Even today somebody was telling me about human unity and, we should declare a decade of unity, human unity, which is a very wonderful idea. But the point is that to really be successful about the idea of human unity, we have to discover the unity of all creation.
Beginning with ourselves.
Beginning with ourselves. Otherwise, it will fail. It will become like a collective human ego. We'll fight war with the aliens or create aliens.
So many communes have come and gone.
Yes, absolutely. So here we see what really this unity is. The material and the immaterial. The many worlds and this world. The entire creation is one chain. Not only man and animal and bird and beast and stone and plant. That much we understand. But we don't understand that apart from this, the gods, the titans, the demigods, all this is a single stair. And we have to see the unity. Then we will understand phenomena like Isis. When we look at this, the immaterial and the material. So this is another kind of oneness. In a deep oneness of all things that are.
There it is.
Entire existence. The universe of the unknown arose. Whose universe? Of the unknown. Is self-creation without end or pause. Reveal the grandeurs of the infinite. See, this is another in traditional spiritual philosophies, there is much discussion whether creation has a beginning or an end. And in the Western context, often there is a discussion about nature, whether nature has a beginning or an end. So it cannot have a beginning or end because it is conterminous with the divine. And divine doesn't have a beginning or end. Only thing is there is a seeming withdrawal. So we use the word pralay. But even there are things which are beyond, which continue to exist. So even if all the three worlds are destroyed in a giant deluge, still creation will not cease because there are worlds of light, worlds built on oneness, worlds of truth, worlds of bliss which continue to exist. And this is all one single chain. So in a creation without beginning, without end or pause, a self-creation, see another marvelous thing.
Yes.
Whose creation is it? It is the divine objectivizing himself. A self-creation without end or pause, reveal the grandiose of the infinite. So we may wonder, we don't see the grandness. That is our limitation of vision. So often I feel like this inside, that the limits of our sight are not the limits of light. Aurobindo wrote a beautiful poem, The Lost Boat. So when the tsunami came, some people asked, I said, see, Aurobindo has already written about it. That a boat is going across the sea and, it is lost. It's drowned in the... So there is so much tragedy for those who are, immediately affected. But then he reveals that this is a limitation of vision because we don't know what happened to those who left their bodies and went to new countries, new climes. We don't know. So all our sense of tragedy is because of the limitation of vision. But when we see the totality of this play, recently there was a cyclone. So some young children were coming and they suddenly came to know. So they asked me, Uncle, we have heard about the cyclone. Should we come or not? So I said, where else you will get the wonderful opportunity to watch a cyclone from close quarters? So they said, yeah, that's a good idea. And they enjoyed. They said, thank you so much. We had such fun. But we get so afraid. If you look at that day, the color of the sky, dark, brownish sky with such winds, tornadoes, gigantic energies, and at the center of it still, the divine presence holding all this. It changes our whole perspective. But if we are afraid of our smallness, this may happen to me, I may catch cold, I may have, this or that. So here...
And the eye is always calm.
Yes, eye is always
The
calm.
eye of the storm is
So
calm.
there we have to... That's the story of, Krishna in the center of the storm Trinavrat. So that's how, what a vision, the grandeurs of the infinite. It flung into the hazards of its play. Now we see, what kind of grandeur it is. Krishna comes, he says, I need a match to wrestle with. Who can be a wrestler able to match with Krishna? He says, come, my own shadow, you become Kansa. There has to be a match. If you look at it in that perspective, it's delight. But unfortunately, it's very difficult because we are so held by the ego and our little ups and downs and, losses and gains. But here is another vision. A million moods, a myriad energies, moods of the infinite. Today a tornado, tomorrow total calm. Today the seas is spate, threatening to drown the river, Mandakini. It's a paradox. It's supposed to be the gentle one, Mandakini.
Yes.
And when it overflew, there was a massive deluge. Shiva, the benevolent. Anyone can come and say, as Aurobindo says, refuge of the lost and the forsaken. They could go to Shiva and say, we need shelter, and he would say, come. But the same Shiva, when he assumes the Rudra form, trident in hand, then everybody shakes. Even the gods begin to tremble. So, million moods and all the ranges in between. A million moods, a myriad energies, the world shapes that are fancies of its truth, and the formulas of the freedom of its force. What a powerful. And if we just dwell on these lines, they liberate us. Nothing is needed. This vastness, this immensity, this power that Aurobindo brings through these lines. We see again, it poured into the ever stable flux, a Bacchic rapture and revel of ideas. Ever stable flux.
Flux. Again,
oxymoron. There is in the Ishopanishad, the divine is described like that. It moves and it moves not. It is near and it is far. It is within and it is without.
Yes.
It is above, it is below. So
in the first edition of Savitri, that the book ends after the letters with the Ishopanishad.
yes, that is the basis of the life. Aurobindo spoke of that.
Yes, he did.
Yes. Ever stable flux. And what it is pouring? It's pouring a Bacchic rapture and revel of ideas. Bacchus. We know the cult, the Greek cult which believed in enjoying.
The god of wine.
God of wine. Bacchic rapture. Nature is sporting, delighting. We call it fury of the elements, but it's playing a football, rugby match. I mean, if Indra and take a human this thing and Agni had to play a rugby match, there are stories like that. What it would be. On earth it will rain lightning today and the storm it's tomorrow. So here it is, revel of ideas, right? Literally, it's not in a orderly form. It's like a massive ocean rushing, and you start counting its rhythm. Where is the rhythm of the ocean when it rushes over the land? Revel of ideas, a passion and motion of everlastingness. There rose unborn into the unchanging's surge. Oh, beautiful. Unborn. So constantly, this is the image of the manifest and the unmanifest. The Gita speaks about it passingly, and that's one of the places where the Gita knocks at the door of the supermind. Vyaktoham avyaktoham. I am the manifest and I am the unmanifest. There are three places where the Gita literally takes us to the doors of the supermind. But Krishna knew very well but was not supposed to reveal. So he waits. Yes, I'll come back as Aurobindo and do the needful. But this is where he goes to that point where he says, I am the manifest and I am the unmanifest. So here we have this same suggestion. There rose unborn. Into the unchanging's surge, thoughts that abide in their deathless consequence. All that has not yet manifested, and from there it is pouring into manifestation constantly. Words that immortal last, though fallen mute. His own words are that. Aurobindo. Acts that brought out from silence its dumb sense, lines that convey the inexpressible. So he's revealing to us that entire process of unmanifest to manifest. So from that silence, words, ideas, energies, everything is pouring in. Lines of descent of consciousness coming out of the silence. New things are getting born. Look where Aurobindo is taking us just through this. Lines that convey the inexpressible. Because beyond it, they are inexpressible. And they are lines of descent of consciousness. There are the great gods who are born just in the dawn. And then they will further initiate lines of consciousness. This lines of descent is, in Indian thought, is there is a very old ancient Indian tradition. Now it's not followed, and naturally because it got corrupted like many things, is that everyone is supposed to have his gotra. Gotra is like lineage. So from line comes lineage. So lineage is always connected to a rishi. So the beauty is that basically it means that these seers were the initiator of the great creation. So we have these 7 seers who are there, and there are 14 gotras. So they were the ones who initiated. So from there the lines of descent of consciousness started. And sometimes the stories are very cryptic. Like one of the rishis is told by God when he appears before him that you create progeny, have children. Now, if you look at it from a crude point of view, we'll say what a command to a rishi. But this is the divine family upon earth. Start the process of creation. So in all of us, there are some lines which are manifesting and trying to manifest, and each of us represents something of that line. So to connect with the Gotra or knowledge meant that we understand the great work undertaken by the great seer at the origin, and we need to take it still further. Now it is finished because now a new creation has to come, which will go beyond these lines, because something else is going to come. But up till now, the creation had followed that. So we see the lines, and from there comes lineage. The lineage literally comes from there, the initiating lines. So lines that convey the inexpressible, the eternal stillness saw in unmoved joy. So Ashupati is describing how the divine experiences this creation, because he can experience it that way. Unmoved joy. His universal power at work display in plots of pain and dramas of delight, the wonder and beauty of our will to be. So you see, a close example that comes to it is the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Wonderful scriptures, amazing. So what we see in Mahabharata is, there are scenes which are gory, ugly, dark. You cannot imagine a good man, a godlike being like Bhima, killing his own cousin brother by breaking open his chest, taking the blood and drinking it. Now you can't imagine anything more gory than that. It surpasses even Draupadi's collective disrobing. That is very gory scene, and this is another. So somebody would wonder that why has he to bring, very modern minds. People say Vyasa is great, and why he had to create such a scene. Now, but see the Mahabharata in the totality, and then watch that scene. You will experience a touch of delight, because you see it in the totality. So that's how it is that when things are in their right place, in the just proportion, then they are part of a huge plot or a huge plan. But when we see them in a microscopic way, one small chapter in the whole book of God, one life, that's what Mother says. The problem with human beings is that they have very brief lives. So all our experiences are based on our little being, little mind, seeing things in a small, fraction of time, not even a fraction of time. But how the divine experience is not that. He experiences the totality, march of civilizations, and Mother and Sri Aurobindo have experienced like that. There are places where Sri Aurobindo speaks about, there's a short essay called Marbles of Time. It can shake the wits out of us if we read it. Just about 3 paragraphs or 2 paragraphs, less than a page, where he describes there is a being sitting and he sees in front of him there is nations like pawns, and he's playing randomly. So he picks up a nation, looks at it, flungs it outside. Can you imagine? And then, of course, events, circumstances will come, catastrophes will follow, and a whole nation is submerged under the sea. Look what happened to Atlantis. Now, we cannot imagine that, but in that state of consciousness, now it is given to man to become one with that state. That is the beauty. Otherwise, we'll suffer. There will be no end to suffering unless we awaken to that state. And Ashwapati is here to show us the way. All, even pain, was the soul's pleasure here. Now here comes the other key.
Yes.
So, in fact, even now, even without that vastness, if we touch the soul, then we have this reversal. Somebody asked the mother about being insulted. So mother said, "My child, it is only the ego that gets insulted. The soul can never feel insult." What a wonderful. Ego gets insulted. So this experience of pain, the body and mind experience pain, but the spirit rises mightier with each defeat. Its godlike wings grow wide with every fall. So for the soul, everything is food for its journey.
Sri Aurobindo says that it can be turned into delight.
Yes, into delight.
Pain can be turned into delight.
Classical example is his own life in the prison.
Yeah.
So if we look at things from again and again, that vastness. So very often we say, why divine punished me or created this pain? That consciousness is infinity. When people ask this question, why me? So I say very simple, is of course taking from one of these stories of Guru Nanak and passage of the mother. My way is, when you walk on the road, do you ever notice how many ants are crushed below your feet? So nature and the divine, they move at such magnitude scale. And because we cling to the form and the immediate things that we see and experience, we don't see and experience what's going to come inwardly and even outwardly. Hence we suffer. So all suffering is because of that. Ashwapati has passed this zone of suffering. He is dwelling in that state of consciousness described in the Ish Upanishad. Tatra ko moha ka shoka ekatvam anupashyata. He who sees oneness everywhere, where shall he have grief? How shall he be deluded who finds oneness everywhere? So this is what is the experience of oneness. Here all experience was a single plan. So Krishna reveals to Arjuna, all experience. You win, you lose, everything is going back into his being. Everything is coming out. That consciousness. The thousand-fold expression of the One, all came at once into his single view. Nothing escaped his vast intuitive sight. Nothing drew near he could not feel as kin. He was one spirit with that immensity. So no doubts are left in our mind about who Ashwapati is now. He is the divine. We may use the word that he has already reclaimed his supramental being. He is the divine. Nothing is far, everything is near. He is one with that immensity. Now he is traveling. So it's not an ordinary travel.
But in book 1, he gives us hints already.
Yes, already.
How he feels the thoughts coming into him of men.
Yes, cosmic consciousness.
Yes.
And the other part is, the closer again, with regard to the human experience, which can slightly comes closest to this understanding is that, we experience ourselves in a certain way. And then supposing there is a it somewhere, then we immediately, instinctively, the attention goes there. And then we can shift attention. All within ourselves, we can easily shift attention. And this whole thing is the totality called myself. So for the divine, it's a totality not only in terms of space, but also in terms of time. Images in a supernal consciousness, embodying the unborn who never dies. What a line this is. Unborn, embodying. The unborn by its very nature is also unbodied. But already there are images which are embodying the unborn. So again the supramental door. That's why he uses the word idea in its original sense. This is where that the unborn first assumes a body, and from there it will go down. Images in a supernal consciousness, embodying the unborn who never dies. What will follow later forms, they will be subject to death, but that element will never die, the birth of the Jivatma. These structured visions of the cosmic self, alive with the touch of being's eternity, looked at him like form-bound spiritual thoughts, figuring the movements of the ineffable. So simultaneous vision of that which is beyond creation and the creation. He is standing at the door where he can experience both these together. What a marvelous experience this is. And that's why the world stair. After this, he will show us point by point. But right now, he is giving an overview and the vantage point from which Ashupati can have this view. Aspects of being, dawned world outline, forms that open moving doors on things divine. Aspects of being, dawned world outline. Became familiar to his hourly sight.
Interesting, his hourly sight.
It's not that he had an experience and after that he lost it. It's his day and night. Each day was a spiritual romance. Each danger brought a keen twang of joy. So that is the state of consciousness in which Ashupati has entered. It is how the divine experiences, and this is the one place, the world stair. See, those who won't read book 2 will miss out this.
Yeah.
How the divine experiences, how the avatar has experienced creation. So here it is. The symbols of the spirit's reality. Again we see that the living bodies of the bodiless grew near to him, his daily associates. So already in Chandanagar we see he became more and more aware of this, and that's when we see this departure from Chandanagar, and that's where Sri Aurobindo is very clear after coming here that this is his mission. And there he would see these great gods coming to him and speaking to him in unintelligible forms of speech. And he had to learn that whole speech, understand, decipher, because he had to work with all of them. Mother speaks about the Trimurti and the great beings. Mother says at one place very casually, yes, yes, my child, I know all of them. The Trimurti and Krishna and all the great gods and goddesses. They used to come when she would meditate, sit on the ledge. So some people ask me, where is that ledge? I say, that is irrelevant, you won't see the gods. Mother is really important to us. Like when I went to Jagannath temple in Puri, my only interest was to see where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has, been. And yes, the hand. So, but when you go there, you see, well, it's, unless you connect it with your feeling, that's not important. We give so much significance. It was their daily life. Where did she not see them? playground, when some girl comes and gives datura flower, mother has named the flower Tapasya, and she says, "Oh, my child, had you given me a little earlier, I would have given it to Shiva, he had come."
Wow.
I mean, it's their daily life. So who can write about Mother and Sri Aurobindo? Really speaking, what their life is. As he has said, not on the surface for men to see.
And on the physical plane,
Uh,
the datura is the most poisonous of all
yes,
plants.
yes,
And no animal will touch it.
yes,
They know
yes,
instinctively.
yes.
And
And
yet, look at that
and
power.
yes, absolutely. The exhaustless seeings of the unsleeping mind. See how beautiful. Where does the mind sleep?
Yeah.
The mind sleeps when it meets that greater light. That is the Susupti. But Ashupati has entered the realm, the unsleeping mind,
Exhaustless.
exhaustless. So again and again we have letterings of its contact with the invisible surrounded him with countless pointing signs, the voices of 1,000 realms of life mission to him her mighty messages. The heaven hints that invade our earthly lives, the dire imaginations dreamed by hell, which, if enacted and experienced here, our dulled capacities soon would cease to feel, or our mortal frailty could not long endure, were set in their sublime proportions there. This is the beauty. Everything at one place, when mother was asked about evil, she says, "My child, evil is something that is not in its place in terms of time and space. Otherwise, if you put it in its proportion, in the right place, it's all right. It's there. But the moment it steps out of its boundaries, encroaches upon another space, that's why you see in Durga story, all these asuras and rakshasas, when they come to Durga, she doesn't kill them. Of course, a couple of them she kills, but she sends them back to their domains. She says, "You have a work there. That's your job. Be there. Do your job. But if you come up, I am going to push you back." So they're in that sublime proportion. So that's how Ashupati is experiencing. That's how the divine experience is. And what they would have endured, we can't imagine. The mother speaks about, in fact, there is a letter of Sri Aurobindo where he says that the mother once prayed to the divine to give her all the difficulties that humanity experiences. And then he says, so far, her prayer has been more than granted. When people asked him about mother's sickness, and she speaks about, this experience when in the First World War, how she was experiencing all that was happening in her own body. And there is even a prayer that her whole body she has offered like a Yagyavedi, Holocaust. And that's where you remember Chinnamasta, one of the forms of the Divine Mother, where she cuts off her own head and offers it into the fire. Chinnamasta. So this, what they have endured, what kind of hell, we can't even imagine. We hear news here and there and we are so much excited about it. But what is the life of a yogin? What kind of beings? So we see this totality experienced and the beauty were set in their sublime proportions there. In here we don't experience them in their sublime proportions. Everything is out of proportion. As mother says at one place, things are not in their places. This is the problem of life. And the supermind is going to put things in their proper place. So we see initially a disorganization. Because everything is now, imagine a child has arranged the room according to child logic. And what happens when his mother comes into the room? Where is... Mom, don't disturb it. This is my arrangement. No, you go and play. And the mother picks up everything. and then makes her own arrangement. So when the Divine Mother enters creation, she sees that what it is, what a disorder and chaos we have created, but we call it order, we call it organization. So initially she has to disturb that order, like Kali, and then like Gauri she will create a new order. So this is what we are experiencing. Of course, in terms of time, it is there lived out in their self-born atmosphere. They resumed their topless pitch and native power. Each world, each energy resumed its true place, its true significance. Their fortifying stress upon the soul. So even the dark energies, they had their role to play. Fortify the soul.
Fortify.
It's like a tonic. You see, snake poison is used to treat heart diseases. It's like a tonic for, it has its own place. It dissolves old clots, things which stick on. So their role is to push us out of our comfort zones so that we may strive for something greater. Bit deep into the ground of consciousness, the passion and purity of their extremes. Here the word purity is used in a very different sense.
Yes.
The typal worlds, the purity, the pure asura, the pure godly type. So here purity is not in, but purity of their. Each one, true to its type, is given its place. And there is a purpose. It has its own role. The absoluteness of their single cry and the sovereign sweetness or violent poetry of their beautiful or terrible delight. The Asuric, the dark worlds, the fair worlds, the godlike worlds, Gauri and Kali, the fair one and the dark one, Mother divine, fair and compassionate, Mother the dark and terrible, fused into one. And it's all delight. We'll close with these lines. There lived out in their self-born atmosphere, they resumed their topless pitch and native power, their fortifying stress upon the soul, bit deep into the ground of consciousness, the passion and purity of their extremes, the absoluteness of their single cry, and the sovereign sweetness or violent poetry of their beautiful or terrible delight.